This presentation is on Immanuel Kant, the categorical imperative, ethical challenges in information systems, and it was produced by Davies Haninga, Ashley Mason, and Lucas Migelski. So first we have to talk about what is the categorical imperative. A categorical imperative is the principle that one should behave only in a way that one would want the behavior to be a universal law. Some possible categorical imperatives are don't lie, don't kill, and don't steal. Now up next, we have a short video from YouTube further explaining the categorical imperative.
Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. 1 Minute Apologist. Apologetics seeks to give credible answers to curious questions, to give a defense. What is the categorical imperative? Immanuel Kant talked about this idea of the categorical imperative. To Kant, this categorical imperative was his way of reducing morality down into a user-friendly system. You see, we all have to have a system by which we discern right and wrong. And for Kant, that was the categorical imperative. Insofar as somebody lived in alignment with the categorical imperative, that person lived moral. However, insofar as somebody lived out of alignment with the categorical imperative, that person lived immoral. This begs the question, what then is the categorical imperative? To Immanuel Kant, there is only one categorical imperative. However, he stated it in different ways. One such way is this. He said, act only in accordance with that maxim that you wish or will to become a universal law. So therein you have sort of this statement by which it becomes a filter for discerning right or wrong. And if this decision that you are about to make is a decision that you would deem to be a universal law, then it fits within the categorical imperative and you are obligated to do it. The categorical imperative is sort of a fancier way of stating the golden rule that was stated by Jesus, where he said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is sort of a measurement or a filter by which we determine right from wrong. And Immanuel Kant would sort of build on that in his categorical imperative, helping us to have a filter for discerning the difference between right and wrong, hence morality.
So how do we determine what is moral or immoral on an action-by-action basis? Well, you start by acting only according to that maxim by which you can at the same time rule that it would become a universal law. For example, if we used do not steal and do not lie from our earlier slide as our categorical imperatives, sabotaging someone's work would be immoral because it would break our categorical imperative of do not lie, as would not telling the truth and stealing. All three of those would be immoral acts because they are against our categorical imperatives. Furthermore, you should act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, as never simply a means. And lastly, you should act as though you were, through your maxims, a lawmaking member of a kingdom of ends, which is the belief that you should do to others as you would have them do unto you. Now, because it is hard to find a rule that should always apply a certain way 100% of the time, Kant decided instead of using categorical imperatives for everything, he would instead use the perfect and the imperfect duty. Now, the perfect duty is the duty that requires us to abstain from certain acts and is almost a categorical imperative. Two perfect duties, according to Kant, are the responsibility to tell the truth and the responsibility to keep promises. So two things that would violate those perfect duties are making a lying promise, which is a promise that you do not intend to keep, or to commit suicide. Now up next is the imperfect duty. which is the duty that is worthy of praise, but praise is not required according to Kant's categorical imperative. So these are the duties which he highly suggests you follow, but he is just a little bit laxer on these than you are with the perfect duty. Some example of Kant's imperfect duties are the responsibility to help others, responsibility to develop one's talents, and the responsibility to improve oneself. So some good ways to follow those imperfect duties would be to donate to charity, to volunteer, and to support the poor. Case study 1 puts you in the shoes of a young marketing professional who has just taken a new promotional campaign to market. You are then asked to present a summary of the sales effect of the campaign. It gives you 3 graphs and asks which one is the most moral option to present. We chose figure 3 because while it does not represent the greatest trend in growth, it is the most accurate of the examples given. If we look at the graphs in chapter 1 on pages 16 and 17 to review, you can see that figure 1 is misleading because it excludes labels. Figure 2 is misleading because it is not to scale. And figure 3 is an accurate representation of the company's growth. We were then asked the following questions. If the marketing professional used figure 1, is his behavior consistent with Kant's categorical imperative? We decided no, he clearly knew that it was misleading, showing more growth without supporting numbers. And if the marketing professional copied a graph from Excel and introduced it to the executives without making sure the data was accurate or to scale, is this a violation of perfect or imperfect duty? And yes, it is. It is a violation of imperfect duty. Following that, we began working on case study 2. In case study 2, a young professional presents his ideas on information systems solutions for considerations by senior management, leaving out ideas by his coworker Leslie, who was called on a family emergency. He misleads senior management to believe that his ideas were in agreement with his coworker, which was not true. We were then asked, according to Kant's categorical imperative, is this young professional's action not to present his coworker's alternative ethical? We decided no, it is unethical, even though her idea seemed to not be the best alternative. Management still needed to be presented with it so they can compare the 2 alternatives. One alternative would have been to present his idea on information systems solutions to management, and then have management look at Leslie's ideas when she is available. The other alternative would have been to postpone the presentation on information systems solutions until Leslie was available. Now up next we have another short YouTube video from 3 Minute Philosophy, further going into detail on how to apply Kant's theories.
Immanuel Kant was a 19th century German philosopher most notable for... Yes, that's right, Kant. That's how you pronounce it. Not Kant, not Kant, not Jones, but Kant. It's a German name, and I'm quite happy to sit here in silence until you're mature enough to get over it. Okay, good. So Immanuel Kant was a 19th century German philosopher most notable for his work on ethics. Ethics is the philosophical study of moral action. It's not just about judging people per se, but rather looking at right and wrong as concepts in themselves and how we might figure out the best way for people to behave. There are 2 general schools of thought on this. Consequentialism divides right from wrong entirely based on the consequences of an action, or in other words, the end justifies the means. Deontology, on the other hand, is the position that the consequences don't really matter because moral judgment is contained in the act alone. Kant was a deontologist and frustrated frustrated with the sort of Mickey Mouse wishy-washy subjectivity of moral theory of the day, he proposed an absolute, stone-cold, objective, unbreakable moral law which he called the categorical imperative. The categorical imperative is based upon Kant's idea that morality is derived from rationality and all moral judgments are rationally supported. So just as rational thought leads us to an objective reality, so too is there an objective morality we can locate through the same process. The categorical imperative is an absolute non-negotiable universal moral law that holds up regardless of context and circumstance. Kant was absolutely unwavering on this point. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, full stop. To further analyse Kant's ethical framework, we can break the categorical imperative down into 3 maxims. The first maxim is that all your actions must have universality. In other words, you should only do something if you think it would be okay if everybody did it all the time. For example, you might be innocently flirting with your 18-year-old co-worker behind your wife's back, but to work out whether this is okay, you have to first imagine a world in which literally every single human being around the entire globe was flirting constantly with attractive teenagers as soon as his or her partner's back was turned. If this doesn't seem like a desirable world to live in, then it's not okay to do it, not even once. The second maxim is that every human being must be treated as an end rather than a means to an end. What this basically means is that you're never allowed to manipulate anyone no matter what. This stands in stark opposition to consequentialist theories that take into account the greater good. Kant thought that the greater good was irrelevant. Each person is his own rational agent and no one person may be manipulated to achieve the goals of another. That means that you can never lie. Ever, to anybody, under any circumstances, for any reason. The third maxim is that you should always behave as though you are the absolute moral authority of the entire universe. It should be noted that some people already think this, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Kant. A major criticism of Kant's second maxim is that if somebody came to your door with an axe and asked you to kindly tell him the location of your children so that he can hack them into tiny pieces, you would be morally obligated to tell him the truth. Kant responded quite controversially, yes. You would, but he didn't see anything wrong with that. Because the murderer is his own moral agent, you're not responsible for his choices, you're only responsible for your own. That said, there's also nothing morally wrong with you locking the door and calling the police. Immanuel Kant is one of the most influential philosophers of all time, not only in ethics, but in epistemology and political theory. However, I only have 3 minutes to talk about him, and quite frankly, anyone who logs onto the internet to listen to me talk about Kant for 3 minutes has already realised this is nothing like what they'd expected.
One ethical challenge that is presented in information systems is the challenge to stay truthful, especially with the constant push of needing to stay ahead of the competition, to cut costs, and to impress stockholders, management, and investors. Now, does anyone have any questions?